Welcome to the weekly roundup, where we break down the latest in Canadian research security. This week, we are absolutely tracking a huge funding battle brewing on campus, a kind of gold rush in defense tech, and, a major crisis of conscience that is shaking the entire world of AI.
But first, let's start with a little teaser of a story we'll be covering in just a bit. There's a major academic showdown happening where one professor is basically threatening to pull the plug on millions in federal funding for the University of Alberta. Yeah, it's a huge clash over hiring policies that could honestly send ripples right across the country. More on that very soon.
All right, we've got a lot to get through this Friday, February 13th, so here's what's on the docket. We're going to kick things off with the incredible breakthroughs fueling Canada's innovation engine. Then we'll dive into the controversies on campus and the digital defenses we need to protect them. We'll also take a peek at how our allies are handling these things before we wrap up with the ethical alarm bells ringing loud and clear inside the world of AI. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, Canada's innovation engine. This is it, right? These are the incredible ideas and the groundbreaking technologies that are at the absolute heart of what we all work so hard to protect.
And believe me, Canada's innovation pipeline is just on fire right now. Out in Edmonton, you've got a facility building these wild, ultra-cold refrigerators that are absolutely essential for stabilizing qubits in quantum computers. Then you head over to Saskatchewan, where scientists are developing these cheaper, more efficient solar cells, which could be a total game changer. And in Montreal, we're seeing some truly futuristic health tech, like diagnostic capsules you can swallow, and even VR for physical rehab. It's amazing stuff.
So let's move from the lab and all those amazing breakthroughs to the front lines of university policy and politics. Let's see what's making news on the University Beat this week.
Okay, huge news coming out of Ontario. So you know how there's been that tuition freeze for years? It's really been putting the squeeze on a lot of schools. Well, the province is finally ending it, but they're capping the increase at just 2%. The real story here, though, is the massive cash infusion they're adding, $6.4 billion in new funding over 4 years. That's meant to stabilize the whole sector.
And now for that showdown we teased at the top. So here's the deal. The University of Alberta wants to switch out its diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, hiring policy for a new model. But a professor from the University of Ottawa is arguing that dropping DEI actually violates the rules for the huge Canada Research Chairs program. He is threatening to take legal action that could literally put millions of dollars in research funding on the line. It's a massive clash.
But hey, it is not all friction on campus. We have some truly historic and just wonderful news. Arviat Nunavut is going to be the home of Canada's very first Inuit-led university. This is such a landmark moment for Inuit self-determination, and it is being backed by some serious funding, including a single donation of $50 million from the MasterCard Foundation. Just incredible.
Meanwhile, speaking of the University of Ottawa, it's also deepening its partnerships with several universities in China. Now, the goal is to boost research and let students move between countries more easily. But, this really highlights that ongoing challenge for all of our institutions, right? It's this constant balancing act. How do you encourage valuable global collaboration while also making sure you're protecting sensitive research?
And that balancing act is actually the perfect transition to our next section, Canada's digital defense. Because with all this amazing innovation and collaboration, you've got to have the protection to back it up.
Right now, we're seeing what you can only describe as a defense tech gold rush. With billions in new military spending, Canadian startups working on drones, AI, and cybersecurity are just exploding. And all eyes are going to be on the capital this December. Because Ottawa Gatineau is hosting the InCyber Forum, which is a huge global summit bringing together the top leaders in defense and law enforcement from all over the world.
So how do these attacks actually happen? Well, a really interesting Google report just broke down the anatomy of an attack, and these hackers are playing the long game. First, they'll just watch employees for weeks. Then they look for a way in. Maybe it's a personal device or even a weak spot in the hiring process. And this is the really key part. They don't just target the big companies. They go after the entire supply chain, hitting smaller firms to find that one weak link.
Of course, this kind of threat isn't just a Canadian problem, not by a long shot. So let's zoom out and take a look at the international playbook to see how our allies are dealing with these exact same challenges.
And what's so interesting is seeing the different approaches. The UK, for instance, is going hard on defense, telling its universities to report anything suspicious directly to MI5. Denmark, on the other hand, is really focused on protecting academic freedom from interference. And then you've got the US, which is doing something pretty wild. They've officially recognized agriculture as a national defense issue, connecting their Department of Agriculture with DARPA.
Now, shifting over to global health, the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization is creating a pretty big vacuum. It's left 68 crucial American research centers, we're talking hubs for pandemic and disease research, just in a state of uncertainty. And that could seriously weaken the world's ability to keep an eye on new diseases.
Okay, and for our final topic today, we're turning to what might just be the biggest emerging threat of all. And it's a weird one, because it's not coming from a foreign adversary. It's coming from inside the house. It's AI's crisis of conscience.
So there's this really troubling trend we're seeing, where top-tier researchers are just walking away from the big AI labs, like OpenAI and Anthropic. But they are not going quietly. They are sounding the alarm loud and clear. As one former researcher put it, the industry is failing to uphold its values.
So what's got them so worried? Well, the core of it is this. They're warning that the frantic race to commercialize and make money is just steamrolling critical safety concerns. They feel like the ethical guardrails that are supposed to be in place are just being weakened or ignored completely, all to rush the next product out the door. And that, it leaves us with a really critical question for the week, doesn't it? When the very people who are creating this powerful AI technology are sounding the alarm, who's actually supposed to be listening? Who has the power and, more importantly, the will to maybe hit the brakes? That's the challenge to think about. Thanks for joining the Roundup.